Do you think in this state we have a robust agricultural policy?
I don't see even a policy as forget being robust.
Okay.
Because the outreach towards the farmers has been very, very poor.
I have been visiting the rural areas and I find that children of 10 to 12 years have dropped out, not because of anything but poverty.
If you're looking at the infrastructure in villages, there are schools where they have cramped up 2-3 classes in one single room.
Hello viewers, today we have with us the dynamic young MLA from Umroi constituency, George B Lyngdoh, an engineer by training, but he has given that profession up to get into becoming a legislator because he thinks that getting the people's voices out is important and serving the people in the way that his father before him had served is much more important than government employment. So thank you for making time for us, George. You and 11 other people had left the Congress in November 2021 to join the All India Trinamool Congress. Can you just give us a few reasons why you decided to do that?
Kumlekum for this time and also to give me an opportunity to interact with the viewers through you and your channel. In fact, I think the entire genesis of the AITC in Meghalaya is well known to all. Considering the crumbling of the Congress leadership in the state and the AICC not heeding to the continuous demands and at the same time engagements with the central leadership on how to move the party forward with the in line with the aspirations of the people and also considering the needs of the organization. Therefore, a new thought was brought in. And therefore, the AITC was the way forward, as we could see.
Why AITC? There are many parties, some quite well known, the Samajwadi Party, and why AITC, which is not very well known in the state?
I think AITC has already stepped into the state. I think right from the late 1990s when the late P.A. Sangma contested on a TMC ticket from Garo Hills. So I think it's not new to the state as such. So, and a leader in Mamata Banerjee, quite well known through several decades of leadership. And people have known her, acknowledged her the efforts to take on the might of the Communist Party in West Bengal, who has ruled West Bengal for more than
30
4
years.
decades.
Yes.
So that's why we feel that the kind of leadership that we need in the country such to take on the BJP needs that kind of a commitment, needs that kind of a leadership. And that's why we feel that the AITC would be the best choice.
Last time you gave a statement to the media saying, "I take politics as a sacred calling to fulfill the aspirations of their people and to be their face and voice. We are not hankering for any seat in the Secretariat or other tempting avenues." I think you're one of the few who could have stated this. And we've seen that you have been performing very well in the Assembly, taking up a whole range of issues. So now that possibly people would want to see you in the ruling conglomerate so that you can do better. How much of enrollment has happened for the AITC in these coming months?
In these past 4 months, where we have actually started the organizational work and getting people together. Just yesterday we reviewed and we've already set up our organizational groups, convening groups in 50 constituencies already. So we are left with some of the urban areas and few rural setups.
How are you doing in Garo Hills?
In Garo Hills, we have completed all the 24 constituencies. And in Khasi Hills, out of 36, in 26, we have already set up all the teams. So what miraculously we can say that it is the people who have come forward and offered themselves to be part of the organization.
Do you have a women's wing?
Yes, we are about to set it up because as we are growing in more constituencies, so we are also trying to bring in more faces to the
Yes,
team.
because see, the fact of the matter is that in Meghalaya, every MLA or prospective MLA or aspiring candidate depends a lot on women voters and women campaigners. They are much more loyal than, the other gender. So, don't you think that you need to also have a few prominent faces of the state in the AITC?
Yes, madam. We are working towards that, and
Okay.
since, as we had said, it's been just a few months for us setting up the entire organization. What we could feel across the state is that a lot of women, especially if you look at the grassroots, a lot of women are participating in our meetings, which in fact is very encouraging. And I think state faces will be there. There have been engagements and dialogues, so
Okay.
they will be looking forward to their
Yes,
joining us.
we are all looking forward to that because if you look at political parties across the state, there's a lot of talk about special needs of women, gender sensitization, but you don't see women's faces in the parties. So we hope AITC will be.
I welcome you also, madam, and other women also.
So, yes, what are the principles, ideology broadly of the AITC that you think will be appropriate for the state of Meghalaya?
The three pillars of which the ITC has been founded right from 1998 talks about Ma, Mati, and Manush, our mother, our motherland, and our people. So I have this great affinity to these the three words because,
Yes.
in fact, it talks about the needs of the people and the actual ethos of our entire state. So with these pillars, I feel that we can really move forward and bring in changes in the state and also live up to the aspirations of the people.
So, based on these three very, very important principles, I should say, uh, have you in Meghalaya created a vision, a vision statement for the coming elections? Because we have seen for ourselves, this state has moved on every 5 years without a vision. Uh, if we go back to the APHLC, they didn't even have a written constitution. So, isn't it important to have a vision? For instance, if you have an economic vision, how do you plan to achieve that goal? What are the things that are needed? How prepared should people be? So, I think all these are very important for a state to get somewhere. As of today, we are not getting anywhere, and we can see that for ourselves. Corruption is rampant, and we can't hold anyone accountable because we don't go back to look at the manifestos of these parties. Hopefully, in 2023, when everyone goes to the polls, hopefully people will look back at those vision statements, if any, or the manifestos and hold people accountable on that.
I personally, I've been talking about uh, a vision for the state, a vision for the district, and a vision for the
Yes,
constituency.
yes,
Because at every level, there are different kinds of aspirations.
yes, yes.
If you talk a state issue at a constituency level, even though it may ring some bells, but then it may differ from the needs of the constituency. The kind of geographical challenges that we find across the state, if you're talking like of an area like Saipum, or if you're talking like an area like Gosapara, they have totally different
Yes,
challenges.
yes, yes.
So therefore, I feel that we need to streamline the entire visioning process by understanding the landscape, the needs of the constituency, the need of the district. So if you compare a district like South Garwins and you compare a district like Riboy, again, different challenges, different needs. So
Yes.
I feel that we have to move towards that direction from now onwards because the aspirations differ and also the needs differ. So at different levels, we have to take it forward with a vision to ensure that there is economic prosperity, there's health, there's education, infrastructure, and at the same time, hope for the people that there'll be a better future.
We talk a lot about climate change and we are seeing it before our eyes. What are the climate change challenges, for instance, in your constituency and in the Ribhoi region as a whole, as of today?
See, climate change has been brought about in the areas that I have been serving. and Umroi district as such is because of massive deforestation. Now, right from the 1990s, after 1996, once the Supreme Court ruling had come, and when there was a ban on timber felling, as you had said, a policy has not been placed to ensure that timber should become, in fact, a livelihood. At the same time, sustaining the ecology of the areas.
Is that possible? Is it possible?
It is possible, madam. Countries like Canada have done it. Countries like other countries have ensured that it becomes a sustainable livelihood for many. So we need to come with that kind of a policy. What I feel is that bringing in policies that are against the will of the people, the kind of activities that people naturally do, coming up with policies and livelihoods that are against the practices will reach us nowhere.
Which is why I think it's very important when we look at policy making, to make policies with the people. That is what some of the projects have done, like the IFAD project. They sit with people. They also create awareness, because people may not have the wherewithal to understand how, what the policy entails, how it's going to impact them, and how is it going to impact them if they continue with the same wrong policies. No?
So that's why fine-tuning will be required, no doubt, in order to ensure that there is the adaptation towards climate change would be there with that particular kind of a focus.
So is Umroi still the food bowl of Meghalaya?
It still is, but the challenges are also there for the farmers, considering the kind of access that they need to have towards markets, towards seeds and various other inputs.
Because the last time there was a rice exhibition, we came to know that quite a few of the traditional indigenous rice plants are already,
Right.
they've become extinct, or people are not growing them anymore because they're not productive. I think we rely too much on the high yielding variety. So
see, again, we have a problem here. When we're looking at high yielding varieties, they need to be supported with fertilizers. They are to be supported with pesticides. But then the practice is different. People are actually looking for locally grown varieties which have adapted to the soil conditions and also to the weather conditions. At the same time, with less use of the kind of massive usage that we're seeing in fertilizers and pesticides in other parts of the country, here there's still a huge percentage of farmers that have not adapted to such kind of practices. Accessibility to inputs, I had said, to manure and seeds is one of the biggest challenges of farmers. So not only rice, but then if you look in my constituency, ginger is one of the most important crop.
Coming to ginger, we have been growing ginger from a very long time, for decades. But why are we not processing it? Considering that the processed ginger oil resin is so expensive, should that not have been a priority?
It should have been. One is that the farmers have not been given adequate awareness, support in terms of infrastructure.
See, we cannot expect the farmers to do the processing, no?
Madam, there are educated farmers also now, at least class 12 pass. Young boys who have passed class 12, even graduates also in certain parts of the state, there are also graduates of farming. So now the thing is that entire support structure has to be there, because the policies that have been drawn for farmers is to bring them under groups like cooperative societies or farmers groups. But then a farmer, from my perspective, is an entrepreneur. To hold him under, or maybe to bind him under a society or a group, in fact, hinders his activities. Because if you look at
there is also a saying that if you have farmer producers groups, you have better bargaining power.
That would happen if the let's say, let's look at the season of rice or tomato or ginger. The harvesting is not done at the same time. Farmer number 1 may complete his harvest in day 1. Farmer number 2 may complete it in day 3. So, but then if you look at the shelf life of the products, they hardly have 1 or 2 days of shelf life. So therefore, once a farmer will pluck his produce, or tomato, or potato, or other veggies, if you look at, now he has to immediately take them to the nearest market.
Yes.
So he can't wait for his neighbor to come for him to harvest his
Which
crop.
brings us to the point of cold storages.
Exactly. So
So
therefore, this entire system, we have to look from in terms of producers, in terms of the chain management, and in terms of market access. So until unless you have these
do you
kind of
think we have,
setup, it will
do
be
you
difficult.
think in this state we have a robust agricultural policy?
I don't see even a policy as forget
Policy
being robust,
robust. Okay.
because the outreach towards the farmers has been very, very poor. I've been asking for data, like as to how many are actually farmers and how many cultivators, because we've been facing land issues, which
Yes.
I think is one of your pet topics.
Yes, yes.
Because until unless we address or identify who is a farmer and who is a cultivator, then your policies cannot be streamlined in that
I see.
particular.
Can you please explain to the viewers the difference between a farmer and a cultivator?
See, a farmer is expected to own land.
Okay.
So he owns the particular land. So either he practices the farming himself or he engages laborers, but then a farmer has his own land. Now we have cultivators who actually do not have land.
They
So
work on leasehold land.
they lease out the land. So the land is either leased, or they practice shifting cultivation from one place to the other based on the productivity of the soil. So that particular aspect also needs to be addressed.
Okay,
Because if every policy is for a farmer, then I think we'll be catering only to hardly 15 to 20% of the entire farming community.
See, this is the first time we're hearing that. And the state has been talking a lot about controlling shifting cultivation. What is your personal viewpoint? Because there are scientists who feel that a jhum field is a multi-cropping field, and there's much more nutrition from a jhum field than from a monocultural land.
See, a monocultural land, if you look from the aspect of ginger, farmers have felt that the yield becomes lesser as it progresses. So therefore, they have to allow the soil to regenerate and also to have the nutritional aspect of it addressed by various natural forms of manuring. So therefore, that's why you have this dual aspect of dual thought of having whether jhum cultivation is better or mono cultivation is better. So that's why the natural farming practices of the people has to be understood. So it differs from crop to crop. So a rice field will be there only, so there will be no shifting. But then for ginger, it is one of the crops that is quite cultivated across the state. So there's a shifting there because the soil needs regeneration. So therefore, every crop has to be addressed based on the needs of the soil, the needs of the farmers, and also by looking at other aspects.
So there's a lot of allegations about contract farming happening in a large scale in Rebhoi areas, where the wealthy landowners of the city have gone to do mono plantation, monocropping, and that people are getting into landlessness in a big way. How would you like to explain this? This is a big problem in our state because we don't have a very clear land holding pattern. We also don't have a very clear understanding of land use. We don't have a land use policy. So we set up anything anywhere. It could be farmland and we can set up an institution there. So how do you think this is affecting Meghalaya?
This is affecting us a lot, madam. If you look at the usages, for example, the illegal coke plants that have come across the state. I was part of the environment.
Do you have it in Rebhoi?
In Rebhoi, as of now, no. But then we have identified industrial areas for that. But then, if we're talking from the state's perspective,
yes.
now zoning is required.
Yes.
Now, as of now, we've raised this in the Environment Committee earlier also. We've raised this in the floor of the Assembly also, where zoning would be required. So every zone will be specific. based on the needs, based on the climatic conditions, based on the soil conditions, based on the habitations that are nearby. So that's why we seeing this haphazard you know erections of institutions, of guest houses, of kind of
Hotels.
industrial units and hotels, haphazardly arranged across the state, which is affecting the habitations, affecting the land usages, affecting even the cultivable land. So there's a lot of encroachment into cultivable land also. So therefore, we'll have to address this issue, and this can start only with a proper registration of land through
Yes.
cadastral surveys, and also through
But there's a lot of resistance to
people's.
cadastral survey. I
See,
don't know
the
when
res-
it can ever become a policy in
See,
the
the
state.
resistance has to be addressed head on. One of the resistance is the high amount of fees, registration and stamp duty that people have to pay. Now, if
And then
you
also this tussle between district council,
yes,
state
the
government.
traditional institutions that have a major role to play. So therefore, now this has to be addressed head on, because we need to understand the kind of fears that people have. At the same time, we have to allow them also to have a stake in whatever policy that the government is trying to push through. If you remember the Meghalaya Land Records and Registration Act that
Yes,
was put in
yes.
1980,
Yes.
that was the first attempt when the cadastral survey was brought into the state. But then that was totally opposed
Opposed.
by the district councils.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
there was some problem, maybe there was no
Opposed
engagement.
by no less than Mr. H.S. Lyngdoh. For I don't know what reasons, but possibly I think there is lack of awareness on what could be the benefits from
Benefits.
cadastral survey.
Yes. So perhaps now all those maybe an effort has to be taken to engage all stakeholders before the policy is redrafted and again pushed back to the people.
So let me come back to one very, very, I would say a topic of great concern for Meghalaya, which is that 41% of households are headed by single mothers. I don't know how much of that percentage is in Reboy, but I think it's widespread, except perhaps Garu Hills. So this is a concern that government doesn't seem to understand or doesn't seem to care about, because we don't hear it being discussed in the assembly. To top it all, 42% of the population of Meghalaya live in these 41% of households. Can you imagine then the poverty levels? And these households each will be having 3 or 4 children managed by a single mother. What would be the AITC's core intervention as far as this issue is concerned?
We have to address this issue by taking all the stakeholders into confidence.
And who would be those stakeholders?
Starting with the family members of those single
Yes,
mothers.
yes.
So, since we have the clans, the clan system cannot be ignored in
Yes.
this aspect, because they have a major role to play, because they are the nearest and dearest ones of
Yes.
the families. At the same time, an institutional setup that will help to address the economic needs of these single mothers, because then as long as we ignore this problem, then the social problems that we are seeing,
Yes.
because
We are also seeing a huge urban migration comprising of these single women.
because lack of livelihoods, inability to fulfill the needs and demands of the children, because some of the children have to drop out from school, because
Yes.
this is one of the major
Yes.
reasons as to why there's a huge dropout rate also. Because from, let's say, if you say a family of 4 children,
Yes.
the mother may be able to support only 1 or 2 to at least go to at least class 10, class 12. So accessibility to these kind of support systems has to be there for the single mothers. At the same time, also stringent laws have to be put in, because again, the men, once they have taken the responsibility of nurturing a family, they cannot withdraw from the responsibilities of actually
Yeah, which
supporting
brings
them
me to that compulsory registration of marriage act. Why has that been diluted?
Yes, that was the biggest question. Even we had questioned the government of the dilution of the act. At the same time, its implementation as well.
Yes.
Because
yes.
even though we're seeing the act in place, The implementation has not been there.
Implementation is always the difficult part. Yes.
Actually, it would be difficult if it has been implemented, madam. My experience is that it has not been implemented at all. Nobody in our rural constituencies, nobody even has
heard
of
it.
that.
Yes. So, see, between implementing an act or a policy and taking it to general masses is a huge gap, no?
Huge gap.
How do we bridge that gap?
Actually, it should not be difficult, because until unless you engage all institutions, educational institutions to start with, our LP schools, our UP schools.
So we should introduce these subjects, I think, earlier, no?
Not introduction of subject, but mandatory, seeking of the documents.
Okay,
because the documentation has to be proper right from the institutional level.
No, but
Since
I'm talking to a very educated person, is it not also high time that we give sex education to children from the age of 10 and 12 years?
Yes,
because one of our big concerns, a big challenge is also teenage pregnancies. We have them rampantly in Meghalaya, and this actually, it replicates poverty many times over.
I think one of the reasons for single motherhood is teenage pregnancy. Because at the time when the boy and the girl, they meet, then at that time they do not realize the responsibility of actually having a family. But then midway, when I meet with my electorate, and when I talk to them, and when they share their grievances and their issues, then I found that this is one of the biggest reasons. Teenage pregnancy leading to single mothers, where the fathers, they actually leave.
See,
their
this
house.
is where we come to save sex. And it's important today to be talking about all these issues in the classroom. You don't have to get pregnant every time you have sex. I think this is a reality that should strike us, and we cannot be diffident about it. We have tried talking to people in the villages and all. They're very shy.
See, I would say sex would always be a moral issue for the state at large.
It's a biological issue as well.
Yeah, so unless both the issues are taken head on, both the moral and
don't
the
you think that the
biological
churches also should be taking up this?
We was just coming to that. So therefore, the schools and the churches can play a major role, and our Shillong Times, our mothers' unions, they have a major role to play.
Yes.
Because once a mother who has gone through the agony of nurturing a family, of giving birth, and at the same time having all the challenges in life, I think she is the best teacher.
Yes.
And she can nurture her children well, and at the same time give them proper advice on how to move ahead in life, especially to take on these challenges.
Yes, I think we really need to train up a whole contingent of people who can train other trainers.
So that's why the role of the Women's Commission would be very primary in this aspect.
Yes, provided it is empowered enough. I think they don't have the adequate resources to reach out. So because they should not be having their meetings in Shillong, they should be branching out all over.
As institution, once they have their branches, they engage with other line departments. I think this problem can definitely be taken, by the horns. And our ashas are there, our Anganwadi workers are there, who are already part of the support system. So with lesser resources, but then maximizing the results, I see that these things can be done.
What afflicts Meghalaya today we have discussed here, but there are some issues that we haven't still addressed, which is poor nutritional levels, stunting of children, and therefore dropping out of the school system. And we don't seem to have any policy to get back the children into schools. I have been visiting the rural areas, and I find that children of 10 to 12 years have dropped out, not because of anything but poverty. They're looking after sheep and cows, and they are paid for that service. If we have too many of our young people who are not educated, how do we, this is the 21st century. Even with the best of policies, an uneducated mind will find it difficult to adapt. So what will the AITC do in terms of a more robust educational policy?
I feel the education sector as such, if you look at it, the accessibility part of it has to be looked into. If it is more accessible, easily accessible schools, just within a few, a short distance from their homes, will be one of the things that
Yes.
needs to be addressed. Infrastructure and manpower. These are the three pillars which I always continuously been talking of, because if a mother has to attend to her livelihoods,
Yes.
at the same time send her children to school, at the same time again, if she is a single mother, then feeding the other
Yes.
children at home. Uh, Now, if you're talking about accessibility, we also have to look from the economic aspect also, because from the rural perspective, we've seen mothers who have not been able to pay school fees of 150
Yes.
rupees also,
Yes.
because lack of economic activity, lack of livelihoods, and access to uh, the kind of resources that is required to sustain such families. That aspect has to be looked into, so that accessibility in terms of resources and the locations of the school, that is very important. If you're looking at the infrastructure in villages, there are schools where they have cramped up
Yes.
two
Yes.
three classes in one single room, so
Yesterday I
therefore the
was.
children
Yesterday I
may not
was.
feel
Yeah.
that the comfort of a school, or really actually feel being attended to, getting the required
Yes.
attention from the teachers. So therefore the infrastructure has to be proper.
Yes.
And in terms of manpower, we're seeing a lot of effort being put in to train the teachers better, which is also bearing a lot of fruits. But then we
But
need,
look at the non-payment of salaries. I mean, how do you expect teachers to give their best when they're not paid on time? And
That's
yesterday
why-
I was speaking to a young lecturer from Kiang Nang Ba College. He teaches in the morning section, gets only 5,000 rupees a month. And apparently there are about 800 students. So some of them apparently stand and listen to the lectures. In in 50 years, this is where we are.
this is where we are.
So, do you think it is ever possible to get out of this rut?
Madam, when I met the education minister once, the current serving education minister, one question that was asked by him as to what is the contribution that you would like, so that is immediate and at the same time doable, to in order to address the problems of the education sector. See, at the district level, we have very monitoring committees, and education is one sector which is never monitored at the district level. So to expect the state to address all the issues of the villages is, an arduous
So,
task, and it's
what
not.
other levels
So
of monitors would we
we
need?
suggested, in fact, I suggested, and then we have this district level monitoring committee for literacy
Okay.
that has been put in by the government from 2019. But then sadly, because of COVID and all, we could not have regular meetings. But then in one such meeting that we've had, many problems came to the table.
Okay.
One, school without toilets, school without electricity supply, then schools where there are, the teacher-student ratio is
Very high.
not proper, where we have more teachers than students, and where we have more students than teachers.
Okay.
So all these can be streamlined. So
Rationalization.
the rationalization has to be done right from the district level. So empowerment of the districts has to be there, because we cannot expect the state to solve all the problems
Yes,
that's
yes,
happening
yes.
in the villages.
That's true.
So as representatives, we can take these issues to the district, and at the same time, the officers from the education department, they are already there. Then we have major stakeholders like principals and headmasters of various schools who can come and voice their concerns at the district level.
Maybe there isn't a body like that, where or a proper platform where people can voice these issues, perhaps.
All this while, that has not been there, even though a start has been made. But then the government has to show its strong intent to activate these bodies, get regular reports.
What about the managing committees? What is their role? Are they strong enough to bring in the necessary changes?
This managing committees differ from school to school. Some schools are well equipped, considering the parents are much more educated. But then some schools we need more support. We need more support.
Is there anything else that you want to say to the viewers, that is of concern to you personally?
My concern is the national education policy. Because the national education policy 2020, if you look at it, I feel education will become more expensive. And then
It's tending towards privatization.
Tending towards privatization, at the same time also shutting down schools, which again will become difficult for people to access. Then people have to go for kilometers to reach the nearest school.
But how much engagement has there been from Meghalaya as a state to input into the national education policy?
I don't know how much effort the state government has put in, but then finally from the framework that we have seen, I think the aspirations, the needs and the concerns of the state has not been addressed. Because people have been too much into GPS and GIS, that the aerial distance have been taken to consider the distance between two schools,
okay.
forgetting the terrain. Because aerially we may be 1 kilometer apart, but then if you actually tread the path, you have to go around and skirt the hill and then come to that particular school. So these kind of geographical challenges has to be looked into. Manpower, because if the national education policy says that we have to give vocational training to students at the school level, from where will we get the infrastructure? From where will we get the teachers to train? So if we have these also, then the resources that have to be put in, and eventually they will be recovered from the students.
From the student. Also, I think there has to be a major restructuring of the education system itself, and what should I say, empowering the teachers, because as of today, I don't think the level or the training that we have for teachers is equipped enough to meet the needs of the national education policy.
Yes, that's why the kind of investment that we're looking at, considering the national education policy that has been laid out, is massive. But then do we see that commitment from the central government or the state government to address this issue?
Yes.
So having a policy is one thing, but actually implementing it is, I think we're just shooting for the moon.
Yes, I think, and also the focus of the national education policy seems to be higher education. They haven't given that much importance to primary, secondary, high school education.
That's why if you look at the dropouts also, if you look at the five-year trend in terms of secondary results and high secondary results, if we have 50,000 students appearing for secondary, then 50%, if you look 54 or 55, 50 to 54% pass percentage.
Yes.
What will happen to those people who could not make it?
Yes.
Now, for the ones who have already passed the secondary also, how many of them have actually made it to the graduation level?
Yes.
So, considering the number of seats, the limited number of seats.
And we are very weak in terms of statistics in the state. There was a time when the Department of Economics and Statistics had regularly would produce that booklet, and we could see data from there. Now we are very short on data. And recently, when the SSLC examination results were out, the Chief Minister congratulated those who did well. The question is, what happens to those who fall between the cracks? Who is paying attention to them?
That is one of the major concerns. That's why I just met a parent just last week, and on Sunday, in fact. And then when I sat with her, she said, I have spent lakhs, considering that she has to spend on the travel fare, she has to spend on their fooding, she has to spend on the fees. And 4 children who have completed their BA second year or their BCom second year. But then eventually she says, now after I have spent so much, there is no employment for them. So I feel that all that resource that I have spent was useless, because eventually my children could not get access to a better life. So aspiration of such mothers across the state are there, especially
so
in
there's a
rural
big
areas.
mismatch between the kind of education we are providing and what the market needs.
What the market needs is. And at the same time also we've been perhaps showing the wrong picture that once you clear your graduation, you'll be
Yes.
getting a government job. Which in fact, even the ones that are already sanctioned, the government is not able to even fill up
No,
the
no. I think
posts.
we've reached saturation point as far as government
So-
employment is concerned.
So we have to ensure that avenues are created. And the other day also I've been talking about how to address the gap of vocational training. Because after you have completed your secondary exam, while you await your results,
Yes.
you have 2 months
Yes.
of time. And after you have sat for your HSLC exam, high secondary, and then again you have another 2 months. So these 2 months can be made very effective.
Yes. Provided
Where-
we have the avenues.
We have, madam. It's just that the kind of programs, the skill development programs that we are seeing being implemented now, we have two which are very prominent. One is the DDU JKY,
Yes.
and one is the PMKBY. Now, both programs are, looking at the same kind of clients.
Trades. Oh.
The clients. They're looking
Okay.
at the same kind of groups of people. I feel now DDU JKY provides employment avenues, and it is incumbent upon the implementing agency to give them at least 6 months of employment after training. But PMKBY is just to train them and then leave them into open market.
Okay.
So why not you give PMKBY a focus on students at the secondary level and high secondary? It may be just a small trade like beekeeping.
Yes. Yes.
So after you clear your 10th, you attend 1 month of vocational training. After you've sat your exams for 12, you attend another month of vocational training. So by the time you clear your 12, you already have
Some
two
skill. Yeah.
two skills
Or
with
two
you.
skills. Yes.
So this will let us focus on livestock. Let us focus on other agricultural activities, floriculture, horticulture.
Yes. Yes.
Give them some skills that actually will give them a livelihood.
So we could have gone on and on, but time is a constraint. Thank you so much for having given us very, very thought-provoking ideas, which perhaps other aspirants can learn from, can glean from, and maybe with that we will have a new hope for Meghalaya in 2023. Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
So we have just had a very long discussion with MLA Mr. George B Lyngdoh, MLA of Umroi constituency, and we've seen that he has a range of issues that he is acquainted with and that he seems raging to take on. So we wish him all the very best, and we hope that we can see change in 2023, and that people who have a concern for the state, who have a concern for the people of the state, will be elected, and that we just do not elect the same old faces that are not taking the state anywhere. We are in a very deep problem in Meghalaya as far as education is concerned, healthcare, as far as poverty is concerned. We really hope to see change in 2023. Thank you.